the Tao that cannot be explained, only lived. For a long time, I believed that life had to be understood before it could be lived. That answers would come first and peace would follow. That meaning would appear once everything was clear, organized, and named. But the more I thought, the further I drifted from myself. The more explanations I collected, the louder the noise inside became. Maybe you feel this too, that strange sensation of knowing too much, and still feeling an unspoken emptiness. That is exactly where the Tao Te Ching begins, not by giving answers but by dismantling the question itself. We live in an era obsessed with control, productivity, and explanation. Everything must be defined, categorized, compared, optimized. And yet, we have never been so exhausted, anxious, and disconnected. That is the paradox. The more we try to dominate life, the less it flows. Lao Tzu saw this thousands of years ago, long before algorithms, aggressive goal setting, and chronic anxiety. Taoist philosophy does not compete with the modern world. It reveals the invisible cost of living in constant effort. The Tao Te Ching is not a book to be rushed through, nor read with a defensive mind. It belongs to an Eastern wisdom that teaches not through accumulation, but through subtraction. It is not a success manual, nor a promise of instant happiness. It is a radical invitation to inner growth, to quiet self-knowledge, to a philosophical spirituality that demands no belief, only presence. Here, learning does not mean adding something to your life, but removing what is suffocating what truly matters. Throughout this video, I will not try to explain the Tao. That would be pointless, and even disrespectful to the work itself. Instead, I will walk with you through states of awareness. Together, we will observe the exhaustion born from excessive desire, the pain of constant comparison, the inner rigidity that slowly breaks us. And little by little, we will move closer to inner silence, detachment, and Wu Wei, the almost forgotten art of acting without forcing, of living in alignment with the natural flow of life. If you came here looking for quick answers, you may feel disappointed. But if you arrived sensing that something within you is asking for less noise, less struggle, and more truth, then this video is for you. Taoism does not promise to change the world around you, it transforms how you walk within it. And it all begins when we accept a simple and unsettling truth. Perhaps what is missing is not more effort, but less resistance. The Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. The mystery of life and the limits of words. I spent a large part of my life trying to understand everything, trying to explain the world, people, choices, myself. I read books, watched lectures, took notes, collected ideas as if, at some point, the sum of it all would finally bring peace. But the more I explained, the farther I seemed from what truly mattered. It was only when I encountered the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu that something inside me began to quiet down. Right in the first line, there was no explanation, there was a shock. An almost uncomfortable invitation to abandon my obsession with ready-made answers and to recognize a limit I had long ignored. Life is greater than what can be said about it. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come from the body, but from the mind. An exhaustion from trying to name everything, control everything, predict everything. Taoist philosophy does not begin by offering solutions. It begins by dismantling that need. The Tao does not fit into words because it is not an object, not a concept, not a belief. It is the very flow of life unfolding. And when I realized this, something unexpected happened. The less I tried to understand intellectually, the more I began to feel. Inner growth was not waiting in the next brilliant explanation, but in the courage to remain silent for a few moments. We have been trained to believe that awareness means accumulating information. But Eastern wisdom points in a different direction. Awareness is presence. It is being fully here without constantly translating experience into language. I began to notice how my mind was always one step ahead, interpreting life instead of living it. Maybe you recognize this too, always thinking about life, rarely being inside it. Taoism does not condemn thought, but it reminds us that thought is not the center. It is a tool, not the driver. When I finally accepted that not everything needs to be explained, something opened, a kind of inner space. A silence that is not empty but fertile. Like stepping out of a noisy street and closing the door behind you. The world continues outside, but inside there is clarity. Lao Tzu seems to whisper across centuries that the problem was never a lack of answers, but an excess of them. We talk too much about life and listen too little to what it is trying to show us. In practical terms, this changes simple things in everyday life. How often do you feel something, discomfort, intuition, a desire to change, and immediately try to rationalize it, justify it, or silence it? Try just for one day not doing that. When anxiety arises, don't label it. When doubt appears, don't rush to resolve it. Simply observe. Walk without headphones. Drink your coffee without your phone. Allow yourself a few minutes of not knowing. That alone is a profound exercise in self-knowledge and applied philosophical spirituality. The Tao Te Ching also taught me something deeply unsettling. Life does not require my understanding in order to function. It already works. Nature does not ask for interpretation to bloom. The river does not need a name to flow. The heart does not consult a manual to beat. And yet, we insist on believing that we can only live well once we understand everything first. This constant need for control is one of the greatest sources of modern suffering, especially within a misunderstood version of personal development that promises total mastery over existence. There is a quiet freedom in admitting, "I don't know," not as resignation but as humility before the mystery. It softens the ego, reduces anxiety, and creates space for a more mature emotional balance. This is where Eastern Stoicism differs from rigidity. It does not harden, it makes us flexible. It does not impose, it invites. And the invitation is not to believe something new, but to release what has already become too heavy. The closer I move toward the Tao, the more I realize it does not want to be understood, it wants to be lived. And that requires a deep letting go of certainties, rigid definitions, and identities we cling to for safety. It is uncomfortable at first. The mind resists and wants to return to what is familiar. But there is something profoundly human in this process. The relief of finally stopping the fight against your own experience. Perhaps, without realizing it, you too are tired of explanations. Perhaps you are not seeking another concept but a sense of relief. And that relief begins right here, when we acknowledge that there is a greater intelligence moving through life, an ancient wisdom that does not shout, persuade, or argue. It simply flows. And when we accept the limits of words, something begins to shift inside us. Something that will inevitably lead us to question the opposites that structure how we see the world. The illusion of opposites. Good and evil, success and failure, light and shadow. For a long time, I organized my life as if it were an internal courtroom. On one side, everything I labeled as good. Success, discipline, strength, productivity, control. On the other, what I judged as bad. Failure, fear, doubt, exhaustion, mistakes. Every day, I tried to expand one side and eliminate the other, as if life were a permanent moral battle. It was only when I went deeper into the Tao Te Ching that I realized something unsettling. Opposites are not enemies, they are accomplices. One exists because the other exists. Lao Tzu points out, with almost uncomfortable simplicity, that where there is beauty, ugliness is born. Where there is success, failure exists. Where there is light, there is shadow. This is not pessimism, it is clarity. Taoist philosophy does not try to fix the world, it observes it. And that observation changes everything. I realized that much of my suffering did not come from events themselves, but from my resistance to accepting that life is made of contrasts. I wanted permanent emotional stability, but that is as artificial as wanting a day without night. In daily life, this illusion of opposites shows up very clearly. We want to be strong all the time, positive all the time, confident all the time. And when we are not, we judge ourselves. We pressure ourselves. We feel ashamed. The paradox is that trying to eliminate the shadow only strengthens it. Eastern wisdom teaches that what you reject within yourself gains power, what you accept transforms. Inner growth is not about becoming better all the time, it is about becoming whole. I remember a period in my professional life when everything seemed to fall apart. Projects stalled, decisions were questioned, and there was a constant sense of falling short. At the time I called it failure. Today, with greater awareness, I see that this failure was precisely what created space for a deep revision of values, pace, and purpose. If I had only experienced success, I might never have stopped. I might never have listened. Taoism taught me that what hurts today may be what supports you tomorrow. Practically speaking, this invites us to change our questions. Instead of asking, "Is this good or bad?" try asking, "What is this revealing?" Instead of labeling a phase as negative, observe what it is asking from you. Sometimes it asks for rest. Sometimes for humility. Sometimes for the courage to change direction. This kind of self-knowledge does not come from denying pain, but from listening deeply to it. There is also a common trap in modern personal development, the obsession with positivity, as if sadness, anger, or insecurity were signs of spiritual failure. The Tao Te Ching dismantles this elegantly. It does not divide emotions into moral categories. It understands that all of them are part of the flow of life. Emotional balance does not come from eliminating extremes, but from learning to move through them without losing yourself. A simple and powerful practice is to observe your own labels throughout the day. Notice how quickly the mind classifies events as good or bad, right or wrong. Just notice. Do not try to change anything immediately. This act of observation alone expands awareness. Over time, you begin to see that many of your reactions come not from reality itself, but from the stories you tell about it. And when that realization arises, something loosens inside. The Eastern Stoicism present in Taoism does not aim to harden the individual against life, but to soften them. It teaches that resisting what is inevitable creates unnecessary suffering. Acceptance does not mean agreement, it means stopping the fight against the nature of things. Rain is neither good nor bad, it simply falls. Night is not a mistake of the day, it is part of the cycle. When I understood this, I began to treat my own phases with more respect. There is a quiet maturity in recognizing that there is no life without contrast. Every achievement carries fatigue, every clarity is born from confusion, every deep presence has passed through distraction. This understanding reduces anxiety, dissolves comparison, and creates a more realistic sense of a meaningful life. You stop chasing an impossible ideal and begin to walk in harmony with what is. And perhaps, as you realize that opposites do not fight each other but complete each other, you begin to notice something even more unsettling. Much of modern suffering does not come from duality itself, but from an endless hunger for more recognition, more status, more validation. A hunger that is never satisfied and that quietly sickens the inner world. A world made ill by ambition, desire, comparison, and permanent dissatisfaction. There was a moment in my life when I realized I was not tired of working. I was tired of desiring. Wanting to be more, have more, appear more, prove more. The mind never rested. There was always a next goal, a next milestone, a next level. And strangely, every achievement brought only brief relief, followed by a new restlessness. When I returned to the teachings of Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, it became clear. The problem was not action itself, but unrestrained ambition that is never satisfied, a desire born not from necessity but from comparison. We live in a culture that has turned comparison into habit. We compare salaries, bodies, routines, productivity, apparent happiness. And the more we compare, the more insufficient we feel. Taoist philosophy observes this with almost clinical clarity. When desire is artificially stimulated, peace becomes impossible. The modern world does not grow ill from lack of resources, but from excess stimulation. Inner growth is lost when we measure our worth by external approval rather than internal alignment. I remember opening social media and, within minutes, feeling a vague discomfort. It was not outright envy but a sense of always being behind. Someone always seemed more accomplished, more disciplined, more fulfilled. And that is when it clicked. That desire was not mine, it had been planted. Taoism teaches that unconscious desire is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. This constant thirst generates anxiety, exhaustion, and a deep disconnection from your own inner path. In professional life, this shows up even more intensely. Endless targets, metrics that are never enough, recognition that never arrives as expected. I realized I was living to meet expectations that were not even mine. And quietly, this was eroding my emotional balance. Lao Tzu warned us long ago, when we overvalue external success, we create competition. When we exalt gain too much, we invite loss. Eastern wisdom does not condemn success, it questions its internal cost. Practically, this calls for an honest review of our desires. A simple but powerful question is, does what I want bring me closer to myself, or further away? Not to my image or status but to myself. Another practice is to consciously reduce exposure to stimuli that feed comparison. Less time in environments that make you feel insufficient, more time in silence. Less external noise, more internal listening. Sounds simple, but it is deeply transformative. The Tao Te Ching also reminds us that governing one's life requires moderation. When everything is excessive, too much information, too much work, too many opinions, something essential is lost. Inner silence gets buried under expectations. And without silence, there is no awareness. Without awareness, desire runs on autopilot. That is why so many people are busy but empty, active but disconnected, successful but profoundly tired. I began to notice that many of my decisions came not from clarity, but from fear of falling behind, fear of not being enough, fear of losing relevance, fear of seeming ordinary. Taoism dismantles this fear by reminding us that every being has its own rhythm. Nature does not compare trees. The river does not compete with the ocean. When we rush our inner time to keep up with the world, we lose contact with what truly matters. One practice that changed my relationship with desire was learning to distinguish necessity from excess. Necessity sustains life, excess drains the soul. This applies to money, commitments, consumption, even relationships. As I simplified, something unexpected happened. Clarity increased. And with it came a quieter kind of satisfaction. Not euphoric, but stable. A contentment that does not depend on applause or constant validation. When personal development is aligned with Taoism, it stops being a performance race and becomes a process of refinement. Fewer layers, less noise, less urgency, more truth, more presence, more alignment with a philosophy of life that does not promise constant happiness, but offers internal coherence. And that coherence deeply shapes how we engage with the world. Perhaps you are beginning to realize that it is not the lack of achievement that hurts, but the inability to rest after achieving. A rest that is not only physical but mental. A space where desire no longer commands, where comparison loses its grip. And it is precisely here that a quiet, almost forgotten question arises. What if what sustains everything is not effort, but emptiness? The emptiness that sustains everything. The usefulness of nothingness. For a long time, I treated emptiness as an enemy. Any space without activity made me uneasy. Too much silence felt like waste. Too much pause felt like falling behind. I felt compelled to fill everything, the calendar, the mind, the routine, even free moments. It was only when I went deeper into the Tao Te Ching that I realized how inverted this view was. Lao Tzu reminds us that a vessel is useful because of the empty space inside it. Without emptiness there is no function. Without space life cannot flow. This idea is simple yet deeply transformative. We live as if value only exists in what is visible, measurable, accumulable, output, results, delivery. But Eastern wisdom points to the invisible as what sustains the visible. Rest sustains work. Silence sustains speech. Non-doing sustains doing. When I understood this, I realized that my exhaustion did not come from effort itself, but from the total absence of empty spaces in my life. In everyday life, this emptiness appears very concretely. How often do you reach for your phone at the first hint of boredom? How uncomfortable do you feel being alone with your own thoughts? That discomfort is not weakness, it is conditioning. We have been trained to avoid inner silence because it brings us face to face with ourselves. And that takes courage. Taoism does not avoid this encounter, it honors it. I began experimenting with small, conscious pauses. 5 minutes with no stimulation at all. No music, no notifications, no task, just breath and presence. At first, the mind protested, creating noise, lists, memories. But over time, something settled. A gentle clarity. A sense of inner space I had not felt in years. It was as if life finally had room to breathe inside me. The Tao Te Ching also teaches that a room is useful because of the space between the walls, not the walls themselves. This completely reshaped my relationship with scheduling and productivity. I realized I had removed all margins from my day. Everything was commitment, delivery, response. Without margin, any disruption becomes a crisis. Without emptiness, any emotion becomes overload. Emotional balance depends more on space than on control. In practice, this can begin very simply. Leave space between commitments. Walk without a destination for a few minutes. Take a deep breath before replying to a difficult message. Go to sleep without stimulation beforehand. Read something with no productive goal, poetry, philosophy, contemplation. These small empty spaces act as nervous system resets and quietly but powerfully strengthen awareness. There is also a subtler emptiness, not knowing. We are afraid of not having immediate answers. But Taoism teaches that not knowing is fertile ground. It is where new understanding arises. When I stopped forcing conclusions, I noticed that many questions resolve themselves over time. Others simply lose importance. Emptiness filters what is essential from what is mere noise. Traditional personal development often focuses on adding habits, techniques, routines. Rarely does it talk about removing. The Tao Te Ching does the opposite. It suggests that inner growth happens more through subtraction than accumulation. Fewer expectations, fewer comparisons, less haste. And the more I removed, the lighter I felt, not empty as in lacking but empty as in available. The philosophical spirituality of Taoism does not seek constant ecstasy, but deep stability. And that stability is born from respecting cycles of withdrawal. Nature does not bloom all the time. There are seasons of dormancy, silence, invisibility. When we honor these cycles within ourselves, something aligns. Life stops feeling like a race and begins to feel like a flow. Perhaps, as you allow this emptiness, you begin to notice something unexpected. Life does not collapse when you stop. On the contrary, it reorganizes. The body relaxes. The mind clears. The heart slows down. And in that space, apparently filled with nothing, you begin to feel supported by something greater, as if a quiet order were at work, without effort, without force. An order that slowly reveals the natural rhythm of existence itself. Nature does not force the natural flow of life. It took me many years to realize that much of my suffering came from trying to force life to fit into my plans. Forcing outcomes, forcing decisions, forcing people, forcing feelings. I confused effort with control, discipline with rigidity, persistence with stubbornness. When I returned to the Tao Te Ching, it became clear how misaligned this was with the very logic of existence. Lao Tzu observes something simple and powerful. Nature does not hurry, and yet everything is accomplished. Not through inertia but through alignment. Taoist philosophy invites us to observe water. It does not fight the rock, it flows around it. It does not confront obstacles, it passes through them over time. And paradoxically, it is precisely because it does not force that it becomes unstoppable. When I internalized this image, I began to see my own rigidity more clearly. How many times did I insist on paths that were clearly closing? How often did I ignore subtle signals because I was emotionally attached to a specific outcome? In daily life, forcing often shows up as anxiety, that constant sense of urgency, the feeling that something must happen now, that time is running out. Taoism dismantles this hurry by reminding us that every process has its own rhythm. When we try to accelerate things artificially, we create friction. And friction leads to wear and tear. Emotional balance does not come from arriving faster, but from walking at the right pace. I began to notice that whenever something flowed naturally, less effort was involved. Important conversations that unfolded without a script. Opportunities that appeared without pushing. Decisions that became clear without anguish. In contrast, everything I had to force demanded excessive energy and almost always came with exhaustion. The Tao Te Ching does not romanticize passivity, but it exposes the waste of energy caused by resistance. In practice, living in alignment with the flow requires listening to the body, to emotions, to context. If the body is constantly tense, something is being forced. If the mind is always anticipating problems, something is misaligned. A simple exercise is to review your most recent major decisions and ask, did this flow or did I push it? Asked honestly, this question reveals where we are fighting life instead of walking with it. In personal and professional development, we are often taught to never give up. Taoism brings an essential nuance. Knowing when to persist and when to let go is wisdom. There are doors that do not open because they are not ours. There are cycles that end not because of failure but because they are complete. When I learned to respect these endings, something unexpected happened. New possibilities began to appear without excessive effort. The philosophical spirituality of the Tao Te Ching does not promise that everything will be easy, but it shows that not everything needs to be difficult. There is a profound difference between acting with intention and acting with tension. Aligned action produces healthy fatigue, forced action produces burnout. And the body always knows the difference before the mind is willing to admit it. Listening to it is an advanced act of self-knowledge. A small habit that transformed my relationship with flow was slowing down before deciding. Sleeping on important decisions. Walking before responding. Breathing before reacting. These small pauses create space for clarity to emerge. Taoism values these spaces because it understands that the best action arises when the mind is not in a state of inner warfare. The more I trusted the natural rhythm of life, the less I needed to control. And the less I controlled, the more present I became. Awareness shifted away from outcomes and toward process. A purposeful life, in this sense, is not about reaching a specific destination, but about walking with internal coherence, even without detailed maps. Perhaps you are beginning to feel this quiet relief. The realization that you do not have to struggle so much. That there is a greater intelligence organizing the flow. And when you stop forcing, something reveals itself. A different kind of strength from the one we were taught to admire. A strength that does not shout, does not harden, does not impose. A soft, flexible, almost invisible force that is nevertheless deeply transformative. The strength of gentleness. The water that wears down the stone. For a long time, I associated strength with resistance. I believed that being strong meant enduring more, staying silent, showing no vulnerability. I hardened myself in the face of challenges, thinking this was maturity. But quietly, that hardening came at a high cost. It was only when I went deeper into the Tao Te Ching that I saw how limited this view was. Lao Tzu states something deeply counterintuitive: the soft overcomes the rigid. Water which appears weak passes through stone. What is flexible survives. What is rigid breaks. Taoist philosophy redefines power. Power is not imposition, it is adaptation. Not confrontation but presence. When I began to observe nature through this lens, I realized how much I had been fighting against natural emotions. I tried to suppress fear, ignore exhaustion, hide sensitivity. And the more I resisted, the more rigid I became. The gentleness Taoism proposes is not weakness. It is emotional intelligence applied to real life. In everyday situations, this gentle strength appears in how we handle conflict. How often does a difficult conversation turn into an ego battle? I entered many dialogues trying to win, to prove a point, to come out on top. The result was almost always exhaustion. When I began to listen more and react less, something shifted. The other person relaxed. The atmosphere changed. Gentleness disarms where rigidity only escalates. In the professional environment, this difference is even more visible. Rigid leadership creates fear and resistance. Gentle leadership builds trust and collaboration. Eastern wisdom taught this long before modern management manuals. A leader aligned with Taoism does not need to raise their voice or impose authority. They influence through example, presence, and emotional balance. This kind of power is quiet, but profoundly effective. In practice, cultivating gentleness begins with the body. Breathing more deeply. Releasing tension in the shoulders. Relaxing the jaw. It may seem small, but the body is the gateway to awareness. A rigid body sustains a rigid mind. A flexible body encourages a flexible mind. These small physical adjustments create real emotional shifts in daily life. I also had to learn to be gentle with myself. Excessive self-criticism is a form of internal violence that often goes unnoticed. I pressured myself for feeling, for making mistakes, for not performing as expected. The Tao Te Ching taught me that treating yourself harshly does not produce inner growth. It produces fear. And fear is not a good guide. Inner gentleness creates space for learning, not paralysis. The Eastern Stoicism present in Taoism does not eliminate pain, but teaches us to move through it without hardening. There is a deep difference between enduring and integrating. When something hurts, integration means feeling it without getting lost. Enduring is merely resisting. Integration transforms, resistance only postpones. This understanding completely changes how we relate to crises, loss, and frustration. A practical exercise is to observe your automatic response to tension. Do you close off or soften? Do you harden or listen? Not to judge yourself, but to recognize patterns. Awareness arises precisely at this point of observation. And when awareness arises, choice becomes possible. Gentleness then stops being instinct and becomes a conscious decision. The more I practiced this quiet strength, the more I noticed its effectiveness. Less emotional, where fewer unnecessary conflicts, more clarity. Life began to flow with less friction. Not because challenges disappeared, but because I stopped meeting them with rigidity. Water does not defeat stone through brute force, but through consistency, patience, and continuous adaptation. Perhaps you are beginning to realize that true power lies not in controlling everything, but in not needing to control so much. And this realization naturally leads to an even deeper question. If gentleness is strength, what sustains this quiet strength? The answer may lie in letting go of ego, of the need for recognition, and in completely rethinking our ideas about leadership and control. The ego and the illusion of control. Humility, leadership, and service. For a long time, I confused control with security. I believed that if I stayed in front, if I was seen, if I had authority, everything would be under control. I wanted to anticipate scenarios, direct people, guarantee outcomes. But beneath that desire was something deeper: fear of losing relevance. The Tao Te Ching, with the calm clarity of Lao Tzu, dismantles this illusion by stating that the wise person does not place themselves in front, and yet leads. That line echoed in me for a long time because it directly confronts the modern ego. The ego craves recognition. It needs to be seen, validated, applauded. At first, this feels like healthy motivation. But when left unchecked, the ego begins to demand attention, status, control. And the more it demands, the more tension it creates. Taoist philosophy observes this mechanism clearly. When someone tries to lead by imposing, they lose respect. When they try to control too much, they lose trust. True authority arises from internal alignment, not from the position one occupies. I began to notice this in small daily interactions. Meetings, conversations, family decisions. How often did I speak not to contribute, but to be noticed? How often did I insist on an idea not because it was the best one, but because it was mine? This kind of honesty hurts, but it frees. Taoism does not ask you to destroy the ego, only to stop putting it in charge. It is an instrument, not the center of awareness. In professional life, this shift is profoundly practical. A leader aligned with the Tao does not micromanage. They create space. They observe more than they speak. They trust the process. This is not a lack of responsibility, it is maturity. Eastern wisdom understands that leadership is about serving the flow, not dominating it. When I began to operate this way, something interesting happened. People took more responsibility. Excessive control gave way to genuine collaboration. In personal life, the ego shows up in even subtler ways. In the need to be right, in the impulse to correct others, in the difficulty of asking for help. The Tao Te Ching reminds us that the wise remain behind, and therefore stay ahead. There is a strategic humility in this, not performative humility but real humility born from the awareness that no one controls everything. And when we accept this, the burden lightens. A simple exercise is to observe your relationship with recognition. When something goes well, do you need others to know it was you? When something goes wrong, do you feel personally threatened? These reactions reveal the degree of ego attachment. Detachment here is not indifference, it is freedom. Freedom to act without constant applause. Freedom to make mistakes without internal collapse. The Eastern Stoicism present in Taoism also teaches that excessive control produces the opposite of what we desire. The tighter you grip, the more slips away. The more force you apply, the more resistance you encounter. Emotional balance emerges when you take responsibility for what is yours and release the rest. There is a powerful serenity in doing what needs to be done and trusting that the rest will follow its natural course. I noticed that when I stopped trying to control people and outcomes, my energy reorganized itself. There was more presence, more listening, more clarity. A purposeful life does not require constant protagonism. Often it asks for silence, support, and being in the background. The ego resists this, but awareness is grateful. And when awareness leads, decisions become more coherent. The Tao Te Ching suggests that the true leader is almost invisible. When the work is done, people say, "We did it ourselves." This is one of the purest forms of service. A service that does not seek glory but harmony, that does not impose but sustains. And this kind of leadership begins within, in how you govern yourself. Perhaps you are beginning to sense that letting go of control is not losing power, but changing the kind of power you exercise. Less noisy, less anxious, less dependent on external approval. And this shift prepares the ground for one of the most subtle and transformative teachings of Taoism. The art of acting without forcing, without struggling against life, without positioning yourself against the natural flow of things. Wu Wei. The art of acting without forcing. For a long time, I believed that acting meant pushing life in the direction I wanted. Planning, insisting, resisting, correcting, adjusting. I confused movement with progress. It was only when I truly understood the concept of Wu Wei in the Tao Te Ching that my relationship with action changed completely. Wu Wei is not inaction. It is action without friction. It is acting in harmony with the Tao, not against it. And this difference, though subtle, changes everything. Lao Tzu shows us that the most effective action does not arise from anxiety, but from clarity. When the mind is in conflict, action becomes heavy. When awareness is aligned, action flows. I began to notice that some of the best moments in my life happened this way. Conversations that unfolded effortlessly, decisions that became obvious, solutions that appeared when I stopped searching desperately. Wu Wei was present in those moments even before I knew how to name it. In daily life, we act too often from resistance. We resist what is, try to shape people, control outcomes, speed up processes. And this resistance consumes an enormous amount of emotional energy. Taoism teaches that when you fight the flow, you become exhausted. When you walk with it, you are sustained. Personal development aligned with Eastern wisdom does not seek more effort, but better direction of energy. I began to observe my internal state before acting. When action came from urgency, it usually created rework. When it came from fear, it generated tension. When it came from comparison, it produced emptiness. But when it came from presence, even a quiet one, the results were more coherent, simpler, more effective. Wu Wei requires awareness of the internal state before external action. This is an advanced practice of self-knowledge. In practice, this changes small daily choices. Responding to a difficult message after taking a deep breath. Waiting a day before making an important decision. Canceling something when the body clearly asks for rest. Saying no without excessive justification. These are not acts of passivity, they are acts of alignment. The Tao Te Ching reminds us that excessive action creates confusion, while right action creates order without apparent effort. In professional life, Wu Wei shows up when you work with focus but without tension. When you deliver with presence, not anxiety. when you trust the process without abandoning responsibility. Interestingly, this state generates more real productivity, not the artificial productivity driven by pressure. Emotional balance directly reflects the quality of decisions and the clarity of priorities. The philosophical spirituality of Taoism teaches that life does not require absolute control to function. It requires cooperation. When I stopped fighting what was not up to me and acted precisely where I did have influence, my energy organized itself. There was less dispersion, less exhaustion, less mental noise. Right action began to arise almost on its own, as if the path revealed itself step by step. A simple Wu Wei exercise is to ask before acting, is this flowing or am I pushing? That question completely shifts the starting point of action. If it is flowing, proceed. If it is being forced, pause. Taoism deeply values the pause because it prevents unnecessary mistakes. The pause does not delay, it aligns. Over time, I realized that Wu Wei is not something you do, but something you allow. The more you trust the flow of life, the more naturally your actions adjust. Awareness replaces anxiety as the guiding force. Simplicity replaces unnecessary complexity. And a purposeful life stops being a tense project and becomes a living path, constantly adjusting itself. Perhaps you are beginning to sense that acting less does not mean living less. It means living better, choosing with more presence, speaking with more truth, moving with more coherence. And when action arises from this quiet place, something essential reveals itself. In the end, it is not the quantity of actions that defines a wise life, but the ability to return, again and again, to what is simple, essential, and true. Returning to simplicity. The path of the sage. After passing through so many excesses, of desire, control, and effort, I began to notice something almost forgotten. Life does not require complexity to make sense. It requires presence. The Tao Te Ching concludes many of its teachings by pointing toward this return to the essential. Not as regression but as maturity. Lao Tzu reminds us that the sage does not accumulate, he simplifies. And this simplicity is not a poverty of experience, it is a richness of clarity. For a long time, I associated simplicity with lack. Fewer options seemed like less freedom. Fewer commitments felt like stagnation. But in practice, the opposite happened. The more I simplified, the more inner space emerged. Less mental noise, less anxiety, less internal conflict. Taoist philosophy shows that excess fragments us, while simplicity integrates us. It returns us to ourselves. In daily life, simplicity begins with small, almost invisible choices. Fewer distractions during a conversation. Less multitasking. Fewer things open at the same time, tabs, projects, expectations. I noticed my mind worked better when my environment was simpler. Inner silence became more accessible. Awareness more stable. And with that, emotional balance stopped being a distant goal and became a natural consequence. Taoism also teaches that the sage avoids excess even in virtues. He does not try to be extraordinary all the time. He is coherent. This coherence generates a purposeful life that does not depend on grand speeches, but on daily alignment. When I stopped trying to impress myself and others, I began to live with more truth. Simplicity has this effect. It dismantles masks. In professional life, returning to the essential means clarity of priorities, doing less but better, saying no more often to protect what truly matters, working with focus instead of urgency. I realized that many of my tasks were not essential, they were merely habits maintained by inertia. By simplifying, energy remained for what truly generated impact and meaning. Eastern wisdom also associates simplicity with humility. Those who need little depend less on the external world. Those who depend less suffer less. This is not isolation, it is inner autonomy. The detachment taught by the Tao Te Ching is not rejection of material life, but freedom in relation to it. You use what you need, appreciate what you have, and release what weighs you down. A practical exercise is to review your routine and ask, what here is noise? Unnecessary commitments, excess information, constant comparison. Removing one thing already creates relief. Removing two creates clarity. Simplicity does not happen all at once. It is built through conscious decisions of reduction. And each reduction returns a little peace. In the emotional field, simplicity is honesty. Feeling what you feel without dramatizing or repressing. Communicating clearly without excessive justification. Listening more than speaking. These attitudes seem simple, but they require elevated awareness. Taoism values this kind of simplicity because it is born of maturity, not naivete. The more I returned to the essential, the more I felt a silent integration of everything I had learned. Wu Wei, gentleness, detachment, emptiness, everything began to organize itself into a lighter way of living. Not perfect, not idealized, but real. A philosophy of life applied to everyday living, not as theory but as a living practice. Perhaps you are feeling something similar now, a desire to reduce, to slow down, to live with less noise and more presence. And it is exactly at this point that the Tao stops being a book and begins to become experience. Because this entire path, from excess to the essential, asks for more than understanding. It asks for embodiment. And that only happens when an ordinary person, on an ordinary day, decides to apply all of this to a real situation in their own life. When nothing was forced, everything aligned. A story about applying the Tao in real life. There was a period in my life when everything seemed to work on the outside, but something was deeply misaligned on the inside. I woke up early, fulfilled responsibilities, delivered results. And yet, there was a silent fatigue that did not disappear with rest. It was not physical exhaustion, it was a constant feeling of living a role. As if I were always reacting to the world's demands, but rarely listening to what life was trying to teach me. It was on an absolutely ordinary day that this became clear. No dramatic crisis, no visible collapse. Just a small delay. An appointment canceled at the last minute. Something that, at another time, would have irritated me deeply. But that day I stopped. Instead of filling the time with more tasks, I sat in silence. I remembered the Tao Te Ching. I remembered Lao Tzu saying that the sage acts without forcing. And for the first time in a long while, I did nothing to fix the moment. In that unexpected silence, I realized how much I had been living by the logic of unconscious ambition. Always seeking the next step, the next recognition, the next validation. I said I wanted inner growth but lived at war with the present. I spoke of simplicity but my schedule was suffocating. I admired Wu Wei but acted constantly from tension. That pause revealed something uncomfortable. I knew the philosophy but I was not yet practicing it. In the days that followed, I began to consciously apply Taoist teachings to small situations. Instead of arguing, I listened. Instead of insisting, I observed. Instead of filling every empty space, I respected the nothingness. A difficult conversation at work flowed better when I abandoned the need to be right. A long-standing problem began to dissolve when I stopped pushing solutions. Nothing magical, just coherent. There was a decisive moment. An important professional choice, the kind that usually comes loaded with anxiety. Before, I would have made lists, asked for too many opinions, tried to predict every scenario. This time, I did it differently. I created space. I walked. I slept. I observed my body, my emotions, my level of tension when thinking about each option. The answer did not come as a brilliant thought, but as a feeling of alignment. One option did not feel euphoric, but calm. And that was the one I chose. The results were not immediate, but they were consistent. Less emotional wear. More clarity. Greater coherence between what I said I valued and how I lived. The Tao ceased to be merely ancient wisdom and became daily practice. I understood, through direct experience, that living with purpose is not about controlling the path, but about walking in harmony with it. This story is not about external success. It is about inner integrity. About stopping the fight against one's own nature. About accepting emptiness, respecting rhythm, abandoning comparison, acting without forcing, leading without dominating, and returning, whenever possible, to the essential. The Tao Te Ching does not promise a life without challenges. It offers something rarer, a life without inner war. And now I ask you, with honesty and presence, where in your life are you forcing too much? What are you still pushing when perhaps it is time to listen? Which part of your routine is asking for simplicity, silence, or detachment? And what if, for a few days, you experimented with living a little more like water, flexible, patient, present? Not as a distant ideal, but in small choices, in the tone of your voice, in the rhythm of your day, in how you react to what you cannot control. Because the true teaching of Taoism is not in understanding the Tao, it is in allowing it to manifest through you. If this content resonated with you, if something here touched a silent place in your heart, I invite you to continue this journey with me. Subscribe to the channel, The Philosophy of Awareness and the Soul, activate notifications, and walk with us along this path of awareness, simplicity, and wisdom applied to real life.